Okay, good day class. So we are now on here sa ating chapter or sa ating general chemistry. We are going to discuss about sa ating nga atoms. Okay, atoms and also sa iya nga atomic structure. Okay, for sa ating nga prelude or sa ating reduction sa ating nga atoms. Okay, so ating nga overall health and susceptibility to disease depends on the complex interaction between your generic makeup and also sa ating nga environmental exposure. With the outcome difficult to predict. Okay, early detection sa mga biomarkers, okay, mga substance that indicates organisms, disease or aton nga physiological state, would allow a diagnosis and also treatment before some condition maging severe pa or hindi na pwede maayo. Recent studies have shown that your exhaled breath contain molecules that may be biomarkers for recent exposure to environmental contaminants or pathological condition ranging from your asthma hasta sa lung cancer. So you have here a picture of an analyzer whereas this device ang gina-measure ya ang gina-exhale mo. Okay, ang component. Next case, scientists are working to develop the biomarker fingerprints that could be used to diagnose a scientific disease based on the amounts on identities of certain molecules in a patient's exhaled breath. An essential concept underlying this goal is that the molecule's identity, okay, which is determined by the number of type of atoms it contains and how they are bonded together. This chapter will describe some of the fundamental chemical properties related to the composition of the matter and including those central to the concept of molecular identity. So you have here history sa aton nga early ideals in aton nga atomic theory. Okay, the language used in chemistry is seen and heard in many disciplines ranging from your medicine to engineering to forensic and also sa arts. Okay, the language of chemistry includes its own vocabulary as well as its own shorthand. Chemical symbols are used to present your atoms and also sa iyang elements. Chemical formulas, okay, depicts molecules as well as the composition of the compounds. Your chemical equations naman niya class provides an information about the quality and also quantity of the changes associated with the chemical reactions. This chapter, okay, will lay the foundation for our study and the language of chemistry. The concept of this foundation includes the atomic theory, the composition and the mass of the atom, and also the variability of the composition of isotopes. Also, ang iyang ion formation. Okay, chemical bonds in ionic and covalent compounds, also the types of chemical reactions and the naming of your compounds. We'll also introduce one of the most powerful tools for organizing chemical knowledge, which is aton nga periodic table. Common theories throughout the 19th century, ito nga history sa aton nga atoms. Okay, the earliest record discussion of the basic structure of matter comes from the ancient Greek philosopher, the scientists of their day. Okay, in the 5th century or before Christ, okay, Leucippus and also Democritus argued that that all matter was composed of small, finite particles that they called your atomos. Okay, a term derived from a Greek word indivisible. They thought of atoms as mostly moving particles that differ in your space, shape, and also sizes, and which could join together. Later, also say Aristotle and others came up with their conclusion that matter consists of various combination of the four elements. Ang yung four nga elements ginamihan na is you have your fire, your earth, water, and also air, and could be infinitely divided. Okay, interestingly, this philosopher thought about atoms and elements as philosophical concept, but apparently never considered performing experiment to test their ideas because sa ilang technological development wala pa. The The Aristotelian viewed the composition of the matter held sway for over 2,000 years until English scholar, which is si John Dalton, helped to revolutionize chemistry with his first hypothesis that the behavior of the matter could be explained using what we call your atomic theory. That was first published in 1807. Many of your Dalton's hypotheses about the microscopic feature of the matter are still valid in modern atomic theory. Okay, here are your postulate of your atomic or Dalton's atomic theory. First, matter is composed of exceedingly small particles, what we call your atoms. Okay, yung Latin word yan or yung Greek word is your atomos. Okay, an atom is the smallest unit of an element that can participate in a chemical change. Number two, you have your element consists of only one type of atom which has a mass that is characteristic of an element and is the same for all of the atom of that element. Okay, then you have a microscopic sample of an element containing an incredibly large number of your atoms, all of which have identical chemical properties. You have here a picture of a copper, and your copper is composed of small atoms. Okay, this figure 2.2, a pre-1982 copper penny. Okay, contain approximately about 3 times 10 raised to 22 copper atoms. Several dozens are represented as brown spheres at the right, each of which has the same chemical properties. And for the number 3, atoms of one element differ in properties from atom of another element. Okay, then a compound consists of your atom of 2 or more elements combined in a small whole. Your number ratio is given to be a compound. The number of atoms of each of its element are always presented at the same ratio. So you have here a picture or sa ating figure 2.2.2 is a copper oxide. Okay, a powdery black compound. Okay, it is a result of combining your copper or which can represent is a color brownie, and for your oxygen, which is ang color red. Okay, it represents a 1:1 ratio. And you have number 5, atoms are neither created nor destroyed during a chemical change, but are instead rearranged to yield the substance and what are different from those present before the change. Okay, you have here a picture sa ating bottle. Okay, you have here a copper. Okay, wala pa sa na-mix sa ating oxygen which is present lang sa ating atmosphere. Okay, when element copper, a shiny red-brown solid shown as a brown sphere, and your oxygen as your kung wala pa na mix, okay, clear, colorless glass shown as red spheres. Okay, react when there is an atom rearranged to form a compound containing copper and oxygen, which is your copper oxide, copper 2 oxide. So representation is sa babaw ng picture. Okay, then you have your Dalton's atomic theory provides a macroscopic explanation of many macroscopic properties of matter that you have learned about. For example, if an element such as your copper consists of only one kind of atom, then it could be broken down into simpler substances, that is into substances composed of fewer atoms or fewer types of your atom. And if an atom is neither created nor destroyed during a chemical change, then the total mass of your matter present when the matter changes from one type to another will always be constant. Okay, that is what you call your law of conservation of your matter. We have here an example of our Dalton's atomic theory. Okay? In the following drawing, the green sphere represents an atom of a certain element, and the purple sphere will represent an atom from another element. If the sphere touch or they are a part of a single unit of a compound, how does the following chemical change, or represented by these symbols, violate any ideas of your atomic or Dalton's atomic theory? If so, which one? Okay, you have here as starting materials. Okay, yung green sphere and also green sphere. Blue sphere then, kung mag-combine sila, ito na equal na ratio. Okay, sa itong solution here, okay, it represents the constituent of your two kag two nga purple nga sphere. Okay, the product will always be consist of one green and one purple. Okay, this violates your Dalton's postulate of the atom theory are neither created nor destroyed. Nga man kinadula ang isa ka ball of sphere. Okay? But they are merely redistributed. Okay, in this case, atoms appear to have been destroyed. Okay, kaya dapat ang matabo ni you will have ito. Okay, you have a green sphere. Okay, therefore you need to have another green sphere pagid kag isa pa ka blue sphere. Okay. Kaya di ba naka-state dito dapat gina nga wala sang atoms nga maguba. Okay, because of yung reaction di, okay, it only gives you one green sphere and one purple sphere. Okay, as we move forward, dili kita makita nyo ato ng mga chemical equations where you will find nga wala sang may mga atoms nga matula during your chemical reactions. Okay, so we are now moving on sa aton nga chemical formulas. Okay, sa atong chemical formulas, okay, a molecular formula is a representation of your molecule that uses chemical symbols to indicate the type of atom followed by your subscript. Okay, to show that the number of atoms of each type of your molecule, okay, a subscript is only used when there is more than one atom of a given type is present. Okay, your molecular formulas are also used to abbreviate for the name of the compound. Then you have your structural formula. Okay, structural formula for a compound gives the same information of its molecular formula. Okay, the type of the number of your atom in the molecule, but also shows how the atoms are connected in a molecule. The structural formula for your methane contains symbols for 1C atom and 4H atoms. Okay, it indicates the number of your atoms in your molecule. Your figure -1, Teresa alone will be explaining the difference between your molecular and also structural. Okay, the lines represents the bonds, okay, that holds the atoms together. A chemical bond is an attraction between your atoms also, or para man siya nga ions that holds them together in a molecule or a crystal. We will be discussing your chemical bonds to see how to predict the arrangement of your atoms in a molecule later. For now, simply know that the lines that are indicated on how the atoms are connected in a molecule will be shown as a ball and stick model and shows the geometric arrangement of which the atoms are with your atomic sizes, not in scales. And also you have your space filling models, shows the relative size of your atoms. You have here, this is your space filling. Okay, and also already ang mga ball and stick. This is represented as your ball. Okay, and ang iyang band will be presented as the stick. Okay. Then you have here your structural formula. Then you have here your molecular formula. Your figure 1. Okay, your A, methane molecule can be represented as your molecular formula. B, A, structural, C, ball and stick, and D, space filling. Okay. Carbon and hydrogen atom are represented as black and white spheres, respectively. Okay, so paano mo balaan kung hindi ang imong carbon? Okay, kaya di ba carbon tayo only have one. Therefore, ang sa tunga or still sa tunga ball and stick, okay, the only one nga sa kabilog B is the black nga sphere. Therefore, it is represented as your carbon. Then ang mga white nga ball nga ni or ang sphere nga ni, that is your hydrogen. Okay, next there is naman sa space filling. Okay, ang the biggest nga sphere or kung hindi naka-touch ang imong mga puti nga balls is your carbon and mga white as your hydrogen. Although many elements consist of discrete individual atoms, some exist as your molecules, okay, made up of two or more atoms of the element, okay, element chemically bonded together. For example, most samples of the elements, your hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, are composed of molecules that contains two atoms each. Okay, they are what you call your diatomic molecule, and thus have the molecular formulas which as your H2, O2, and also N2 respectively. Other elements commonly found as the ionic molecules such as your fluorine, and also your bromine kag iodine. The most common form of the element, which is your sulfur, is composed of moleculars that are consist of 8 atoms of your sulfur. Its molecular formula is S8. Okay, therefore you will expect you need to write S ka-walo ka basis. Then it will be connected with a line for your structural formula. So, ga-interlock sila tanan. Then you have your B, your ball and stick method or demonstration sa imong sulfur kag sa space filling model. And here, there is the LOM, you have your hydrogen atom only. Okay, then you have your, before natin start that data. Okay, it is important to note that the subscript, okay, ang subscript is ang small letter nga sa dalom. Okay, that is your subscript. Okay, following the symbol of a number in front, of any symbol do not represent the same thing. Okay, for example, your H2 and your 2H, okay, represent distinctively different species. Okay, your H2 is a molecular formula. It represents a diatomic molecule of your hydrogen, consists of two atoms of the element that are chemically bonded together. And the expression of your 2H, on the other hand, okay, it indicates two separate hydrogen atoms that are not combined as a unit. The expression of your 2H2, okay, represents there is two molecules of your diatomic hydrogen atom. Okay, you have here, kung H lang, okay, you have one hydrogen atom. Then if it's 2H, okay, two hydrogen that is not bonded together, wala sang line connect. Then you have here H2, okay, you have one H2 molecule, okay, which is represented as a space filling model. Then you have 2H2. You have two H2 molecules. Okay, the symbol H, 2H, H2, and 2H2 represent different entities. Now let's now go sa aton nga compounds. Compounds are formed when two or more elements chemically combine, resulting in formation of bonds. For example, hydrogen and oxygen can react to form your water, and your sodium and chlorine can react to form your stable salt. We sometimes describe the composition of this compound with what we call your empirical formula, which indicates the types of your atom present and the simplest whole number ratio of the number of your atoms or your ions in the compound. For example, you have your titanium oxide, okay, used as a pigment in a white paint and in a thick white blocking type of your sunscreen. Okay, as the empirical formula of your titanium oxide, it is TiNO2. Okay, this identifies the element of your titanium and also your oxygen, and it is constituent with your titanium oxide, and that indicates the presence of twice as many atoms of the element oxygen as atoms for your element titanium. Okay, you have here figure A. Okay, white compound, which is your titanium oxide, provides the effective protection from the sun sa aton nga sunscreen. In your letter B, okay, this is a crystal of your titanium oxide or TiO2 containing your titanium and oxygen in a ratio of 1:2. Okay, how do you know the ratio? By its number sa dalom or by its subscript. You have titanium na isa, then you have 2 oxygen. The titanium atoms are the gray and the oxygen atoms are your red ones. Okay, as discussed previously, we can describe the compounds or the molecular formula in which the subscripts indicates an actual number of atom of each element in a molecule of a compound. In many cases, the molecular formula of a substance is derived from the experimental determination of both its empirical formula and its molecular mass. Okay, the sum of the atomic masses for your atom composed of the molecule. For example, it can be determined experimentally that benzene contains two elements, your carbon and your hydrogen, and that for every carbon atom in benzene, there is one hydrogen atom. Thus, the empirical formula of your benzene is C8. Okay? Pero ang iyang experimental determination of the molecular mass reveals that a molecule of your benzene consists of your carbon atoms, that is 6 hydrogen atom. So that the molecular formula for your benzene is C6 and H6. Okay? Guys, yung class, ang empirical formula is ang shortcut. Okay, daw ginakuha mo lang ilang LCD kung sa math pa. Then, ang iyang molecular formula is the exact amount of atoms kung pila ang iyang composition. Have here benzene. Okay, benzene with sa iyang structural formula. That's your C6H6. Then, ang imong ball and stick method. And also yung space filling, and D is ang yung benzene seen as a clear liquid. Okay, if you know that the compound formula, we can easily determine the empirical formula. Okay, is somewhat of an academic exercise and revised chronology in generally followed in actual practices. For example, the molecular formula for acetic acid, a compound that gives vinegar its sharp taste, which is your C2H2O2. This formula indicates that the molecule of your acetic acid contains two carbon atoms, 4 hydrogen atoms, and 2 oxygen atoms. Therefore, ang ilang ratio is 2:4:2. Okay. Dividing by the lowest common denominator, which is your number 2, or your LCD is 2, gives the simplest whole number ratio, which is now 1:2:1. So therefore, ang iyang empirical formula sang imo nga acetic acid is CH2O. Note that the molecular formula is always a whole number multiple of an empirical formula. Okay. So if you predict another compound with the formula, which is your acetic acid, okay, which is C2H4O2, okay, could exist, then you can demonstrate good chemical insight as and are correct. Okay, you have 2 carbon atoms, 4 hydrogen atoms, and 2 oxygen atoms. So we can arrange them to form your methylene formate, which is used in manufacturing your insecticide and also for quick drying finishes. Okay, your methylene formate molecules have one of the oxygen atoms between the two carbon atoms, okay, differing from the arrangement of your acetic acid molecules. Okay, your acetic acid and methyl formate are example of your isomers. Okay, so ang isomers is the same ang ilang molecular formula, pero ang positioning sang ilang atoms is different. Okay. Isomer compounds has the same chemical formula but different molecular structures. Okay, ang ilang positioning. Note that this small difference is the arrangement of the atom and has a major effect on their respective chemical properties. You would certainly not want to use a solution for your methyl formulate as a substitute for your solution for your acetic acid or for your vinegar when making a grass salad nga man, because ang imong methylene formulate was sayo nahambal lang sa previous nga statement is what we use for your insecticide and also for mga quick drying finishes. Okay? You have here a picture of your acetic acid and also yung mga methylene formulate. Right? You have your carbon, okay, that is attached with your 3 nga hydrogen. Dire, you have your carbon attached with your 3 oxygen, 3 hydrogen. Pero ang mga carbon di isang acetic acid was replaced with your oxygen here. Okay, oxygen is bonded with your carbon. Pero dire, carbon is bonded with your carbon is bonded with your oxygen na sa last nga part. So dire, oxygen, there's a double bond sa imong carbon and your carbon is lastly bonded to your hydrogen. So that's the difference between your acetic acid and your methylene formate. Okay, many types of your isomers exist. Okay, acetic acid and methylene formate are structural isomers, compound in which the molecules differ Acetic acid and methylene formate are structural isomers, compound in which the molecules differ in how the atoms are connected to each other. There are also various types of your spatial isomers in which the relative orientation of the atom in space can be different. For example, the compound carbon, okay, found in caraway seeds or spearmints and also in mandarin orange peels consists of two isomers that are like mirror image of each other. You have here carbon smells like caraway and sa aton nga red seeds. Ang aton nga carbon smells like your spearmints. You have here ang ilang nga structural formula. Okay? Pero do nag-opposite lang gid. Same lang ilang molecular. Okay, that's why you have a positive kag negative. Okay, so your molecules of your carbon are spatial isomers, in which they are differ in relative orientation for the atoms in your space. Okay, sa aton nga left modification works by your sa aton Wikipedian credits. Okay, your key concept and also summary. Okay, a molecular formula uses your chemical symbols and also subscripts to indicate the exact number of your different atoms in a molecule or your compound. An empirical formula gives the simplest whole number ratio of atoms in a compound. A structural formula also indicates the bonding and also arrangement of the atoms in the molecule. Your ball and stick and also your space filling model shows the geometry arrangement of the atoms in your molecule. Then your isomers naman niya class, okay, are compounds with the same molecular formula, like this one sa dalom, pero different ang ila arrangement sang atoms. Now, let us now proceed sa atomic structure and also sa itong nga symbolism. Okay, the development of the modern atomic theory revealed that most of their inner structure of their atoms. Okay, it was learned that the atom contains a very small nucleus composed of a positively charged protons and uncharged neurons. Okay, surrounded by a much larger volume of space containing your negatively charged electrons. The nucleus contains the majority of the atoms mass because of your protons and also your neurons, but are much heavier than your electrons, whereas your electrons occupies almost of the atom's volume. Okay, the diameter of your atom is on the order sa mga 10 raised to negative 10 meters. Okay, whereas the diameter of your nucleus is roughly around 10 times 10 raised to negative 15 meters, about 100,000 times smaller for our perspective about their relative sizes. Considering this, if the nucleus were the size of a blueberry, okay, the atom would be the size of a football stadium. Okay, this is kumpara lang. Okay, is the nucleus Okay? Pero kung blueberry ang imong nucleus, then the atom would be a size of a stadio. You have here atoms and the protons and also yung mga neurons kag electrons that is composed of them are extremely small. For example, a carbon atom, okay, weighs less than 2 times 10 raised to negative 23 grams. And an electron has a charge of less than 2 times 10 raised to negative 19 coulombs. Okay? When describing the properties of a tiny object, such as your atoms, we appropriately small units are measured, such as the atomic mass unit, which or atom nga AMU. Okay, that is the unit for your atoms, and has the fundamental units of your charge, or signify as a small letter E. Okay, the AMU was originally defined based on the hydrogen and the lightest element, then later in the terms of oxygen. Okay, since 1961, it has been defined with regards to the most abundant isotope of your carbon. Atoms of which is our assigned masses are exactly 12 AMU. This isotope is what you call your carbon 12, and it will be discussed later sa ating module. Thus, one of your AMU is one AMU is exactly 1 is to 12, okay, of the mass of your one carbon 12 atom. Okay, your 1 AMU is equals to 1.6605 times 10 raised to 24 grams. Okay, okay, the Dalton and the unified atomic masses unit are alternatively units that are equivalent to your AMU. The fundamental unit of charge are also called as your elementary charge, equal to the magnitude of the charge of your electron, which is your E. Okay, which has a charge of 1.06 times 10 raised to 19 coulombs. A proton has a mass of around 1.0073 AMU and has a charge of 1 plus, your proton. A neuron is slightly heavier particle with a mass of 1.0087 AMU with a charge of 0. Okay, neuron, so neutral. Okay, and its name suggests that it's neutral. The electron has a charge of -1. Okay, and it's much lighter particle with the mass of about 0.00055 AMU. And it would take around 1,800 electron to be equal mass of your one proton. The properties of these fundamental particles are summarized in your table. There is below 2.4.1. Okay. An observation student must notice that the sum of your atom's subatomic particles does not equal to your atom's actual mass. Okay, the total mass of their 6 protons, 6 neurons, and also 6 electrons is around 12.0993 atomic mass unit, slightly larger than your 12 AMU of your actual carbon 12 atom. Okay, this missing or mass known is your mass defect, and you will learn about this sa atong nagyapon nga chapter. Sa atong nga table, okay, this is already summarized na positioning nila sa ila location sa imong electron. It is outside the nucleus. Okay, ang proton kag neurons mo okay, located inside. Ang charge sa ilang column, you have your electrons, which is your negative. It is negative 1.062 times 10 raised to negative 19. Then your proton as your positive is 1.0602 times 10 raised to negative 19 man. Ang ilang charge unit, 1 minus, 1 plus. Okay, for your proton, then your neuron 0. And ilang AMU or ilang masses, you have your electron which is 0.000, duha ka 5. Then ang iyang mass in grams which is 0.00091 times 10 raised to negative 24. So yung mga proton naman niya class, so ang iyang AMU is 1.00727. Ang iyang mass in grams is 1.67262 times 10 raised to negative 24. And sa iyang neurons naman is you have 1.00866 for your AMU and grams in 1.67493 times 10 raised to negative 24. The number of your protons in the nucleus of your atom is its atomic number. So, tandaan nyo lang ang iyang protons na value. This is the defining trait of an element. Its value determines the identity of your atom. For example, many atoms that consist around 6 protons is the element carbon and has the atomic value number of 6, regardless of how many neutrons or electrons it may have. A neutral atom must contain the same number of positive and negative charges. So the number of your protons equal has the number of your electrons. Therefore, the atomic number also indicates the number of your electron in an atom. The total number of your proton and also your neutron in an atom is what you call your mass number, or A. There is your mass number. And the number of your neurons is therefore the difference between the mass number, which is your A, minus your atomic number, which is your Z. Your atomic number will be represented as your Z. Okay, will be equal to the number of your neuron. Atomic number Z is the number of protons. Mass number is A. Okay, is equal to the number of proton plus the number of your neurons. Then, if you need to look for your number of your neurons lang, okay, is simply subtract your mass number, okay, minus your atomic number. Okay, so atoms are electrically neutral if they contain the same number of positive charge and also negatively charged electrons. When the number of the subatomic particles are not equal, the atom is electrically charged and it is called your ion. Okay, the charges of your atom defines as what you follow. Okay, your atomic charge is equals to the number of protons minus the number of your electrons. Okay, as we discussed in more details of the chapter, your atoms and molecules typically acquire charges by gaining or losing your electron. Okay, the amount or the atom that gains one more electrons will exhibit negative charge. It's what you call your anion. And positively charged atoms called your cations are formed when your atom loses more electron, one or more electrons. For example, neutral sodium atom, which is ang iyang is 11, has 7 electrons. Okay? If this atom loses 1 electron, it will become a cation with a charge of 1 plus. Okay? A neutral oxygen atom, which is your has an 8, okay, has an 8 electrons. Okay? If this gains 2, okay, if this gains 2 electrons, it will become an ion with a 2 negative charge. Okay? Ang iyang atomic number is 8, okay, then minus sa iyang number of your electrons. Okay? Because ang iyang 8 minus 10, you will have a result of 2 minus. Therefore, it gained 2 electrons. Okay. For example, here you have composition of your atom. Your iodine is an essential trace element in our diet. It is needed to produce your thyroid hormone. Essentially, insufficient iodine in a diet can lead into your development of a greater enlargement of our thyroid gland. If you are picture of a thyroid, also my iodine salt. The addition of the small amount of your iodine in the table salt has essentially eliminated the health concern of the US that has much 40% of the world's population and is at risk of iodine deficiency. The iodine atom are added as an ion and each has a 1 negative charge and has the mass number of 127. Determining the number of your proton, also electron, neurons, is one of these iodine ions. For solution, okay, the atomic number for your iodine is 53. Okay, this tells us that the neutral iodine atom contains 53 protons. Kaya no gani ang iyang atomic number is also the number of your protons. Okay, if this nucleus has 53 electrons outside its nucleus because the sum of the number of your proton and your electron is equal sa iya nga mass number, which is 127. Therefore, i-subtract lang. Okay, the number of your neurons is 74. Okay? Naman, because you have 127 minus 53, which is your protons, okay, will have you 74 neurons. Since the iodine is added as an one negative ion, the number of electron is 53 minus 1. Okay? Because kay anion siya, di ba, negative, okay? It is minus 1. Therefore, ma-change ang imong value. Okay? It will turn into positive 1. Therefore, it is now 54. Therefore, the number of your electron is 54. That is the reason behind nga naging 54 siya, wala siya nag 52. Okay? Therefore, the number of your if your imong neuron sa imong iodine is 74, then ang imong electron, the number of your electron is 54. 74 sa imong neuron and 54 sa imong electron. Okay. It's recording. Okay, so chemical symbols. Chemical symbols are an abbreviation that we use to indicate an element or an atom of an element. For example, the symbol for our mercury is Hg. Okay, you have here a picture name. This is some mercury. Okay, we use the same symbol to indicate one atom of mercury. Okay, microscopic domain, or to label a container of many atoms of an element, or for yung mga mercury kung nga sa bottle. The symbol Hg represents the element mercury regardless of this picture. And it could be represent one atom of mercury or a large amount of mercury. The symbol for several common elements and their atoms are listed in this table sa dalaw. So example ya lang ni, pero sa aton nga gid nga mga symbols makita mo gid na siya sa table of elements. Okay, some symbols are derived from their common name of an element. Other are the abbreviation of the name in the other languages. Symbols have one or two letters. For example, your H. Okay, H stands for your hydrogen, and for your Cl naman, okay, stands for your chlorine. Okay, to avoid confusion with other notations, only the first letter of the symbol is capitalized. Yaman. For example, your CO, okay, it stands for the notation or the cobalt. Okay? Pero ang C kag capital nga O, okay, is the notation for the compound carbon monoxide. Nga carbon monoxide because it represents your carbon, which is letter C, and your oxygen nga letter O. Okay, nga man nag-monoxide na sa class. Sa later ta pang discussion, you will know the different nga mga prefixes nga gina-add ta to properly naming your compound or ang imo nga mixtures ang imo nga elements. Okay, all known elements and their symbols are in your periodic table. Okay, so tandaan nyo nila, if it is a first letter with a capital, then a second letter nga small letter, it represents only one element. Okay. Pero yung mga CO, which is capital C and capital O, it is a combination of your carbon and your oxygen, which is your what you call your carbon monoxide. Okay, you have here mga elements mo. Then their symbols, okay, kag ilang Latin name, which is ang old nila. Okay, that's why wala tagabutang sa mga iron, which is not IR or I. Okay, because I is for your iodine. Ano. You have your aluminum, for example, it's EL. Your bromine, which is BR. Ang mga dire, at least naging butang nila ang ilang Latin name or ilang previous name before sila change to lead, mga iron. Okay, you have your magnesium, you have your mercury. Ang aginta ang iyang symbol is Hg because it is from the name or name niya sa una nga hydrargyrum. Okay? You have your potassium, which is letter K, which is kalium. You have your copper. Okay, copper is not CO. Kaya ang CO tana is for cobalt. Your copper is from yung symbol which is Cu from the word coprom. Okay, your gold naman yung class. Okay, your gold is AU, so capital A, small letter U, okay, from the word arum. You have your tin. Tin is SN, okay, stands for stannum. Okay, your sodium naman yung class Na from natrium. And for your silver, it is Ag for argentum. Okay, so traditionally, the discoverer or discoverers of the new elements name the element. Depende kung ano ilang gusto. Okay, however, until the name is recognized by your International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry or yung mga EUPAC. Okay, so tandaan nyo na itong abbreviation. The EUPAC stands for International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. Okay, the recommended name of a new element is based on their Latin words. Okay, for its atomic number. Okay, for example, your element 106 it was called an Helixium, which is UNH element. Ang yung mga 107 naman niya was called your Unislipstum, okay, which is UNS. And element 108 was called your Uniluctium, which is UNO. For several years. These elements are now named after their scientists or location kung saan din sila discover. For example, your element 106 now is now called your Seaborgium, which is ang iyang symbol SG in honor sa iyang discoverer Glenn Seaborg, a Nobel Prize winner who was active in the discovery of several heavy elements. Now, let us now go with your isotopes. Okay, the symbol for a specific isotope of an element is written by placing the mass number as a superscript. Okay, to the left of the element symbol. Okay, the atomic number is sometimes written as a subscript preceding the symbol, but since the number defines the element's identity as does its symbols, it is often omitted. Okay, for example, your magnesium. Okay, magnesium exists as a mixture of three isotopes. Okay, each with the atomic number of 12 and with the mass number of your of 24, 25, and also 26 respectively. This isotope can be identified as your 24 magnesium, 25 magnesium, and also 26 magnesium. Kaya ginamit niya na class ang sa magtanaw ko sa may periodic table, you have your different na mga values sa mga magnesium. For magnesium, you have 24, 25, and 26. Okay, these isotope symbols are read as your element mass or element mass number and can be symbolized consistent with this reading. For instance, your 24 magnesium is read as magnesium 24. Okay, it can be written as magnesium-24 or Mg-24, and your 25 magnesium is read as magnesium 25 and can be written the same as 24, magnesium 20-25 and magnesium or Mg-25. All magnesium atoms have 12 protons in their nucleus. They only differ only because of 24 magnesium has neurons or 12 neurons in its nucleus, and sa imong 25 magnesium has 13 neutrons, and sa imong 26 magnesium it has 14 neurons. Okay, you have here this picture. You have the mass number sa imong helium, which is your He. Okay, yung atomic number, then ang iyang charge. Then you have your magnesium here. Okay, dahil iyang pag-change sa iyang isotope is yung magnesium 24, then iyang protons, the number of your protons, and iyang charge. Okay, information about the naturally occurring isotopes of their element and their atomic number. Okay, 1 to 10 is given in the table sa dalom. Okay, note that in addition with these standard names and their symbols, the isotopes of your hydrogen are often referred as the using of their common names as their accompanying symbol. Okay, for example, you have your hydrogen 2, okay, which is often symbolized as 2 2 hydrogen or 2H. It's also called your deuterium and sometimes symbolized as D. Okay, and then yung mga hydrogen dash 3, okay, which is symbolized as 3H, ang superscript na 3. This is also called your tritium and symbolized as T. You have here sa dalong, it's your protium, okay, which is ang mga hydrogen only has one superscript. Okay, ang atomic number is the same as 1. The number of protons is the same, pero ang ilang number of neurons, okay, dira sila differ. And also ang ilang mass, galain man. You have your protium with a 0 number of neurons, your deuterium, which has 1 neutron, and your tritium, which has 2 neutrons. Kaya ang ilang mass, you have 1 AMU or 1.0078 AMU, then 2.0141, okay, and for your tritium, which is 3.01605. Okay, for your helium naman ya class, okay, there you have your 3 helium and your 4 helium or helium-4 and helium-3. Okay, ang ilang number of neurons, differ man. You have your 1 neuron for your 3 and 2 neurons sa mga 4. Same sa mga lithium. Okay, you have your lithium which is lithium-6 and lithium-7. Okay, yung -6 has 3 neurons and yung -7 has 4 neurons. Okay, sa mga beryllium has 9 and also 10. Sa mga boron, okay, ay sa mga beryllium is only isa lang natin. Then sa mga boron has 10 and 9. Then sa mga carbon, you have your carbon 12, carbon-13, carbon-14. Okay, different ang ilang neurons, which is 6, 7, and 8. For nitrogen naman yung class, you have 14 and 15. Your oxygen, 16, 17, and 18. Your fluorine, okay, isa lang siya, which is 9. Then for your neon, you have 20, 21, and 22. Okay, for your neon naman, okay, you have your different nilang neutron value. You have your 10, 11, and also 12. Now, for your atomic mass naman yung class, okay, because each proton and each neuron contribute with approximately 1 AMU of the mass of the atom, and each electron contributes far less. Okay, the atomic mass of a single atom is approximately equal to the mass number ang iyang whole number. However, the average masses of an atom of most elements are not whole numbers because most elements exist naturally as a mixture of 2 or more isotopes. Okay, the mass of an element shown in the periodic table or listed in the table of your atomic masses is already weighted with its average mass of all the isotopes present in a naturally occurring sample of that element. Okay, this equals the sum of your individual isotopes mass multiplied by its fractional abundance or ano sila kadamo sa imong environment. Your average mass is the total of your fractional abundance times your isotopic mass. Okay, so hindi tamang gitna pang pasolbon pero this is how they are being solved. Okay? For example, you have your element boron. It is composed of your 2 isotopes, okay, which is has the value of around 19% or 19.9% of all boron masses, and it is 10B or with the mass of 10.0129 AMU. Okay, and the remaining are 80.1% that are 11B with the mass of 11.0093 AMU. Therefore, to solve for its average, okay, the average atomic mass of the boron can be calculated as this. Okay, you have boron average mass times your 0.199 times 10. Okay, sa ano ni, sa din ka ni makuha sang 0.199, okay? Ang value nga ni nga gin-convert mo into numerical value. Okay, di ba percentage niya sa. Okay, so times mo lang siya sa iya nga AMU. Okay, that is 0.199. Then plus your 0.810, which is the percentage of your 11 or boron 11. Okay, with the atomic mass of 11.0093. Therefore, pagkuha mo sa ilang EMU, then kindly add it. Okay, therefore your boron average mass is 10.81 AMU. It is very important to understand no single of boron atom weight exactly around 10.8 AMU. Okay, the 10.8 AMU is the average mass of all boron atoms, and the individual boron atoms weigh either approximately around 10 or 11 nga AMU. Now, we have here example of calculation for average atomic masses. Okay, a meteorite found in a central India contains the trace of the noble gas, what you call your neon, that was being picked up from the solar wind during the meteorite trip through the solar system. Okay, the analysis of the sample of the gas showed that it is consists of 91.84% neon with a 20 nga isotope. Okay, ang iyang mass naman yun nga class is 19.9924 AMU. Then you have your 0.47 neon 21 which has a mass of 20.9940 AMU and 7.69% of neon 22 with a mass of 21.9914 AMU. What is the average mass of the neon in the solar wind? Okay, same lang gihapon sa ginograta sa babaw. Kindly convert ang iyang percentage into decimal value which is i-move mo man lang ni siya 2 places paadto sa left. Okay, therefore you will have an decimal value of 0.9184 times mo lang sa iyang AMU or sa iyang mass which is 19.9924 AMU plus ang next nga value which is 0.47. Move ka duha ka place, therefore give mo duha ka 0 day which is now 0.0047 times ang iyang mass. And lastly, sa imong neon 22 which is 7%, 7.69% which is value ta nga 0.0769 okay, times 21.9914 AMU. Kindly multiply that, okay? Then you will now have the answer of 18.36. Then you have 0.099 and 1.69. Okay, then ang ilang yun, sagwa na lang ang AMU. Kindly add all values, then sum it up. Now your final answer for the what is the mass or average mass atong neon sa atong solar wind is 20.15. Next example is calculate the percent abundance. Okay? Percent abundance naman, guys, the naturally occurring chlorine consists of your chlorine 35 with has the mass of 34.96 AMU and your chlorine 37 with the mass of 36.96 590 AMU with average mass of your 35.453 AMU. Therefore, we need to calculate for the percent composition naman. Okay, wala sa dan kahatag percent composition but nakahatag siya sa total mass. Do i-reverse mo ang aton nga ginobra nga solving. Ang hatag lang di is ang percentage or ang mga masses. Okay, ang masses gali isang kada isotopes pero wala ang ilang nga percentage or ang ilang nga percentage sa abundance sa environment. Okay, so what is the percent composition of your Cl in terms of these two isotopes? Okay, how to solve this one? Okay, the average mass of your chlorine, okay, is the fraction that it is 35 Cl times the mass of your Cl35 plus the fraction that is from your Cl37 times the mass of your Cl37. Therefore, average mass is equals to a fraction of your Cl35 times the mass of your Cl35. Then you have a fraction of Cl35 times the mass of your Cl37. Okay, if we let x represents the fraction, okay, that is your Cl35, then the fraction that is Cl37 is represented by your by 1. Okay, kaya amo naton nga kuhaan or ang aton nga whole, you have your 1 minus x. Therefore, the fraction that is Cl or 35 plus the fraction that is 37 must be added up into 1, so that the fraction of your 37 must be equal to 1. Okay, minus the fraction of your 37. Ay, medyo komplikado ni sa nga dugay na involve ng inyong math. Pero this is how you will solve it. So ano itong mga given, ano nahatag na. You have your total mass, di ba? This is the total mass or the average mass. Okay, which is 35.453. Okay, ang given, this is the mass of your Cl35. And this is the mass of your Cl37. So you have here the value x will be represented as your Cl35, and this 1 minus x will be represented the percentage or sa mga values sang mga Cl37. Okay, kindly multiply the value of x sa diliman. Therefore, you will be given 34.96885x. Okay, plus, okay, what happened here is ang imo nga 1, okay, i-multiply mo man sa 36.5 mu. Therefore, you will be given this value. And ang imo nga x man okay, since may negative siya nga sign, okay, it will be carried on man nga i-multiply mo siya sa dili nga value. Therefore, you will have a value of negative 36.9650x. Negative plus ang value ya. Okay? Then, okay, para masapos, okay, you will transfer the x nga value sa piyak nga side kaya di ba masapos mag-solve kung ang x ari di sa left side. So it will look like this. You will have 36. So i-add text ko. Okay, so your 36 point down 369659x. Okay, then ang among nga value which is your 34.96885 nga x masaylo man siya sa piyak. Therefore will ang negative mo di ba naging positive siya, so ang positive mo magiging negative, so it will be minus 34.96885x equals, okay, value nga nabilin di which is your 36.96590. Then ang positive mo nga value nga, this is the average mass di ba sang imo nga chlorine. Okay, kay masaylo siya sa piyak, it will have a negative value na siya, maging 35.453. Ano ko sa piyak na, so it would look like this. Now, okay, siyempre, ang iano na lang, subtract na lang, you will now have the value which is ang 1.99705x kag ang diri sa piyak which is 36 point ang among nga value minus 35.453 will be 1.513. Okay? So, kay para at least makuha mo ang value sa imong nga x, okay, the value of your x will be divided sa numerical value which is your 1.99705. Okay, para makuha na di ang value sa imong x. Therefore, the value of your x is now 0.7576. Okay, so now solving the yield of your x or your 0.7567, okay, which means that it is equal to 1. Therefore, your chlorine consists of your 75.76% sa imong Cl35 because ano gayong hambalta, your X will be represented sa imong chlorine 35. Then ang imong chlorine 37 be represented as 1 minus x. Okay, then kailangan mo yung mga values sa imong x. The value of your x is 0.7576. Therefore, it is 0.2424. Therefore, the value of your chlorine sa imong 35 is, kaya convert mo na into percentage sign class ha. So, move mo man na siya sa right side. Okay, maka 1, 2, giving you the value of 75.76% for your CL35. And for your CL37 naman yung class, 1, 2. Therefore, it is 24.24% CL. Now, let us now proceed sa aton nga reduction sa aton nga atoms and also ions. Okay, airship is filled with with a lifting gas that is less dense than the surrounding air, and the most commonly used lifting gases are your hydrogen and also your helium. Okay, hydrogen is an extremely flammable and also a diatomic gas, whereas your helium is non-flammable or monoatomic gas. The danger of using extremely flammable hydrogen as your lifting gas was evidenced by the Hindenburg disaster in 1937. Okay, being non-flammable, helium is much more safer lifting gas than your hydrogen. Helium is an inert element and does not react with other elements to form your compounds. On the other hand, your hydrogen is a very reactive element, also reacts with other elements to form your compounds. That makes the properties of your hydrogen different from those of your helium. How are the properties of your elements relate to the surface of the atoms? This chapter will be describing the structures of your elements and also ang ilang symbolisms of your atoms, and you will be seeing later that the properties of each element is related to the structure of your atom. So you have here a picture of your Hindenburg burst into flames above your New York, Jersey, and the year 1930 and May. So you have here molecular and also ionic compounds. Okay, in ordinary chemical reaction, the nucleus of each atom and thus the identity of your element remains unchanged. The electron, however, can be added to the atom by the transfer from from other element or rather other atom by the transfer lost by the transfer of other atoms or shared with another atoms. The transfer and also sharing of your electron amongst atoms governs the chemistry of the elements during the formation of some of your compounds. Atom gain or lose your electrons and also form electrical charges particle, what you call your ions. Now you have here an example of your Na atom. Okay, your Na atom, sa iyang nucleus, you have your 12 nga protons and also 12 nga electrons. Then you have 11 electrons nga sagwa. Now, because kay nadulaan siya sa iyang electron, okay, it will gain a positive charge. Therefore, you have your Na plus ion. So the difference between your Na atom, okay, Na atom is kumpleto pa ang iyang electron. Whereas ang iyang Na positive ion, okay, where it gains a positive charge, okay, you will be gaining a positive charge if you are losing an kung madulaan ka sa imong nga electron. You have here sa imong sodium atom has equal number of your protons and electrons and it's unchanged. For your B naman niya, it is now a sodium cation. Cation class ang tawag ta sa mga positively charged nga mga ions, okay, and has lose your electron, so it become more gain one more protons, okay, than electrons, giving it an overall positive charge signifying by the superscript plus sign. Okay, you can use the periodic table to predict whenever an atom will form an ion or a cation, and you can often predict the charges of the resulting ions. Atoms of many main group metals lose enough electrons to leave them with the same number of electrons as an atom or the preceding noble gases. To illustrate this, an atom of your alkali metal or your mga group 1 loses 1 electron and form 1 cation with a charge of 1 plus charge. Okay, anong mo din nga alkaline earth metal sa mga group 2 loses 2 electron and also forms a cation with a 2 plus charge and so on. For example, ang imo naman nga neutral calcium nga atom, okay, with the 12 to 20 protons and 20 electrons, okay, readily loses 2 electrons. Therefore, this results in a cation with a proton of 20 and 18 nga electron and ang iyang charge is 2 plus. Okay, it has the same number of electrons as the atom of the preceding noble gas argon that can be symbolized as Ca2+. And the name of the metal ion is the same as the name of your metal atom from which it forms. So your Ca2+ is also called your calcium ion. When atoms of your non-metal elements form ions, they generally gain enough electrons to give them the same number of electrons as your atom and the next noble gas in the periodic table. Same mga atom of your group 17 gains 1 electron and form 1 anion. Kaya diba ang aton, kung mag-gain siya electron, it will have a negative charge. Okay? Ang tawag mo sa mga ion na is anion. Okay, with a charge of 1 minus. Atoms of group 16 gains 2 electrons, okay, and form ions with a 2 negative charge and so on. For example, sa aton nganing an ion is your neutral bromine atom with a proton of 35 and electron of 35 and it will gain 1 electron to provide it with magiging 36 electrons na. Therefore, ang yang resulting anion is 35 proton and 36 electron and has a charge of 1 negative. Okay? It has the same number of your electrons as your atoms and the next noble gas, your krypton, with a symbol as a symbolized your Pr negative. Dili wala nagabutan kung pila ang numerical value basta if you see a negative sign, it signifies that it gained 1 electron. As discussed sa mga theory supporting your favorite status of your noble gas, electron numbers reflected in these predictive rules for your ion formation and provide in a later chapter for this text. Note that sa ato nga note the usefulness of your periodic table is predicting likely ion formation and charge. Moving on sa ato nga far left, you have here example sa ato periodic table. Far left sa ato nga periodic table, elements often form anions with a negative charge equal to the number of group that has moved from left to the noble gases. For example, sa ato nga group 17. Okay, this is your group 17. Okay, one group left, okay, of the noble gas form 1 ion negative. Okay, so yun sa mga group 16, which is delay. Okay, elements group 2 sa mga group 16, okay, it will gain 2 electrons, okay, forming 2 negative ions. Ay, hindi ka libas ka doon. Okay, this kung ano gali. Okay. So, continuing. More was I. Kaya ito nga group 16, okay, these groups gains 2 more electrons, giving them with 2 negative ions. This trend can be used as a guide in many cases, but its predictive value decreases when moving towards the center of our periodic table. In fact, transition metals and other metals often exhibits variable changes that are not predictable by their own location on their periodic table. For example, your copper, okay, the mga copper forms ions with a +1 and 2 plus charge. Okay, and ions can form your ions with your 2 plus kag 3 plus nga charges. You have here yung mga copper. Copper stands for your Cu. Cu din. Okay, here is your copper. Copper is 1 plus and also 2 plus. Then imo naman nga iron, which is your Fe. Fe is 2 plus and 3 plus. Therefore, kung mag 2 plus na gani, galus siya sang electrons. Okay, you have here composition of your ions. An ion found in some your compounds use an antiperspirant, contains your 13 protons and 10 electrons. Okay, what is its symbol? Because sa atong solution, because of the number of your protons remains unchanged when an atom forms an ion, the atomic number of your element must be 13. Therefore, ano aton nga atomic number with us 13? Sa ating periodic table, di mo na siya makita. You have your aluminum. Okay, the aluminum has lost 3 electrons and thus has the power and thus 3 more positive charges. Therefore, it is 3 plus or 13 and has an electron of 10. Thus, the aluminum is an cation ion, which is your Al3 plus. Then you have your formations of your ions. Okay, magnesium and your nitrogen react to form your ionic compound. Predict which forms of ions which form a cation and the charges of each ions. Write the symbol of each ion and then name them. Solution or paano tayo solve? Magnesium positions in the periodic table is in your group 2. Okay, group 2. Okay, this is your magnesium. Kasi yun has 2 plus na charge. Then your magnesium and your nitrogen. So ions. A magnesium atom must lose 2 electrons to have the same number of your electrons as an atom of your noble gases, which is your neon. Thus, a magnesium atom will form a cation with 2 fewer electrons than your protons and has a charge of 2 plus. The symbol for the ion in your magnesium is 2 plus and it's called your magnesium ion. Then your nitrogen naman yung class, okay, position in your periodic table at group 15, reveals it is a non-metal. Your non-metal forms negative ions, what you call your anions. Therefore, gagain siya electron. Okay, a nitrogen atom must gain 3 electrons to have the same number of your electrons sang imo nga atom of the following noble gas, neon. Thus, a nitrogen atom will form an ion with 3 more electrons than protons and the charge will be 3 minus. Therefore, the symbol sa imo nga nitrogen ion, which is N, okay, will be N3 negative. Here, amo niya nga symbol or ionic symbol. Yeah. Okay, now it is called your nitride ion. The ions that have been discussed so far are called your monoatomic mga ions. Okay, that it is. Okay, these are your ions formed by only one atom. We may find many polyatomic nga mga ions. Okay, ano ng polyatomic ions? These ions, which act as discrete units, are electrically charged molecule or in a group of bonded atoms with a overall similar na nga charge or may charge na sila kay maskit combine. Okay? Some of the more important polyatomic ion are listed diri sa dalawang table, diri, which is your ammonium oxide, ammonium, your mga hydrolium, okay, which has an ion of 3, ion of 1, diri man, this oxide, which is an 2 negative, 2 is a negative na value, then yung mga peroxide, which has a negative ion charge man. Then you have your acetate, which is a chemical of a compound which is composed of your CH3, COO negative or an anion. And so on and so forth. Note for this system of naming of your polyatomic ions, you have your mga suffixes. Suffixes is ang gina-add mo sa puntan lang word. You have your ATE and your ITE are suffixes designated for your atomic ions containing more or fewer oxygen nga atoms. Then you have your prefix nga per, okay, or PER, short for an hyper, and for your Mga hypo naman, meaning you're under nga prefix. Okay? Are prefixes meaning there are more oxygen atoms than your ATE nga suffix and fewer oxygen than your ITE nga mga suffixes, respectively. For example, you have your perchlorate. Okay, your perchlorate base composed of zero. You have your ClO4, then a negative ion charges. Then you have your chlorate. Okay, chlorate ClO3. Okay, then you have your chloride. Okay, your chloride has a 2. Therefore, gapanubo ang nga value. Your perchlorate, okay, per means your short, sa mga hyper, this is the highest highest oxygen composition. Then you have your chlorate na lang, wala na sang per sa nga name, may AET lang galing. You have your ClO3, and for your chloride as your lowest, which is ClO2. And you have your hypochlorite, okay, which has the lowest nga value, which is only 1 oxygen. We have here 4 oxygen atoms, you have your 3 oxygen here, and you have 2, and you have only 1 oxygen atom. Okay, unfortunately, the number, okay, you have your per, okay, per means hyper, okay, hyperchlorite, okay, which is IPE, okay, which has the highest oxygen composition. Then you have your chlorite lang, which is ClORAT, which has the 3 nga value sa imong oxygen, and your chlorate which is ClO2, and your hypochlorite, which is ClO. Okay, unfortunately, the number of your oxygen atom corresponds to the given suffixes or prefixes. It is not consistent. Okay, may mga iban nga pinakataas nga value pero wala man gidya galabot like 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, kadepende ang ilang oxygen composition. You have your nitrite. Okay, your nitrite no?
Pangalan?
Oo, pangalan. It's nitrate kali, oh. You have your nitrate, which is NO3, okay, while sulfate is SO4. Okay, this will be covered in more detail sa dalumpa sa atong nomenclature na gid. Okay, the nature of the attractiveness forces the hold of your atom or ions together within the compound is the basis of your classifying of chemical bonding. When these electrons are transferred into your ion forms or your ionic bonds, okay, sa iyang result, the ionic bonds are electrostatic forces of attraction. That is, okay, the attractive forces experienced between objects of opposite electrical charges, in which case your cations and your anions. Luton ta ato nga cations are positively charged ions, and your anions are negatively charged ions. Okay, when these electrons are being shared and molecules are being formed. Okay, your covalent bond results that your covalent bonds are the attractive forces between the positive charged nuclei and bonded atoms and one of the more pairs of your electron that are located between your atoms. Compounds are then classified as your ionic or molecular covalent. On this basis, parang balantaton nga mga bonding sa kung anong man ang nga bonding sa that type of your molecule. Now you have your ionic compounds. Okay, when an element is composed of an atom that is readily lose electron, which is a metal, it reacts with an element composed of an atom that is readily gain electron, which is a non-metal. A transfer of your electron usually occur and produces your ion. Okay, the compound formed by this transfer is being stabilized by the electrostatic attraction, which is what you call your ionic bond. Okay, between the ions of opposite charges present in a compound. For example, when one of your sodium atom in a sample of a sodium metal, which is your group 1, it gives up an electron to form sodium cation. Okay? And each of your chlorine atom sa aton nga group 17, which is a gas, okay, accepts one electron to form your chloride anion. Okay? The resulting compound will be NaCl. Okay? Is composed of sodium ions and chloride ions in a ratio of 1:1. Isa ka sodium kag isa ka chlorine nga ion. Similarly, each calcium atom sa aton nga group 2 naman niya, okay, can give up 2 nga electron. Okay, pwede sa maging 2 plus. Okay, and transfer one of each chlorine atoms into a chlorine nga or sa aton nga Cl that can accept one electron. Therefore, you have a CaCl2. Kaya diba aton nga Cl can only take up one electron. Okay, Cl negative lang siya. Okay, which is composed of Ca2 plus and Ca negative ions in a ratio that is you have one calcium ion and two chloride chloride ions. A compound that contains ion that is being held together by ionic compound is what you call your ionic compound that is being bonded by your ionic bonds. Okay, the periodic table can help us recognize many of the compounds that are ionic. When a metal is combined with one or more nonmetals, the compound is usually ionic. These guidelines works well with predicting ionic compounds formation for most of your compounds typically encountered in the introductory of your chemistry course. However, it is not always true. For example, today you have your aluminum chloride. Okay, your aluminum chloride is not ionic. You can often recognize ionic compound because of their properties. However, ang mga ionic compounds are solid that are typically melts in your high temperature and boils at an even higher temperature. For example, is your sodium chloride. Your sodium chloride will be melting at 801 degrees Celsius and will be boiling at 1413 degrees Celsius. Okay, as comparison to a molecular compound of your water that melts at 0 degrees Celsius and boils at 0 degree boils at 100 degree Celsius. Okay, in a solid form naman niya, okay, and your ionic compound is not electrically conductive because its ions are unable to flow your electricity, okay, and the flow of charged particles. Okay, when molten, however, it can conduct electricity because its ions are able to move freely through the liquid. You have here a picture of for our next example, if we're predicting the formula for your ionic compound, a gemstone sapphire is mostly compound of your aluminum and also oxygen. Okay, that contains aluminum cations, which is your mga aluminum, which is A3 plus, which is an ion, a cation, and your oxygen is an ion which has a O2 negative. Okay, what is the formula of this compound? Okay, the solution, okay, how or paano ito i-combine? You have to, because your ionic compound must be electrically neutral. Okay, it must have the same number of your positive and negative charge. Okay, therefore you need two aluminum ions which will be charged at 3 or 3 plus, that would give us 6 positive charges. Then you need to have 3 oxide ions or yung mga oxygen which will be charged with the 2 negative and would give us 6 negative charges. Therefore, ang mga formula sa imo nga aluminum kag ang imo nga oxygen that would be need to be combined is your A2. Kita nyo nga na naging subscript na siya. And for your oxygen nga O3. You need 2 aluminum to make a positive 6 nga charge, then 3 oxygen to make a negative 6 nga charges. Okay, so then many ions compounds contain polyatomic ions as the cations and anions of your both. As a simple ionic compound, this compound must be electrically neutral, so their formula can be predicted by treating the polyatomic ions as discrete values. We use parentheses as a formula to indicate a group of atoms that have the same unit. For example, the formula for your calcium phosphate, your phosphate, di ba, naton class, is a polyatomic ions. And then, one of these minerals is in our bones, that is your Ca phosphate. Okay? Ang mga phosphate, that is composed of your phosphorus and also oxygen. Okay? That is PO4. Then yung mga oxygen, yung mga calcium, that is a 2 plus nga cation. And your ang mga phosphates, that is same siya gyapon nga 3 plus, 3 minus. Okay? So this formula indicates that there is 3 calcium cations or calcium ions, which is C2 plus for every 2 phosphate nga group. Okay? The phosphate or PO4 group are discrete units, each consisting of your phosphorus atom and 4 oxygen nga atom. Okay, having overall a charge of 3 negative. Okay, the compound is electrically neutral na naman, because to make a positive, pila di kasi mga calcium, your calcium is 2 plus. Okay, then ang imong phosphate, which is 3 minus. The same siya sa aluminum kag oxygen, di ba? Pero waxliscad lang ilang charges. For your calcium, it is 2 plus, then for your phosphate, it is 3 minus. Okay? Para maging neutralize siya, para the same ang ilang charges, you need 3 calcium that will give you positive 6 and 2 phosphate that will give you negative 6. Okay, therefore neutral. The formula shows the total count of 3 calcium and 2 phosphate and 8 oxygen nga atoms. Okay, predicting the formula of the compound with your polyatomic ions. Okay, your baking powder contains your calcium dihydroxide phosphate, an ionic compound composed of your calcium and your hydrogen, dihydrogen, ibig sabihin dua, dihydrogen phosphate, which is PO4. Okay, what is the formula of this compound? Okay, para ma-solve itong formula, the positive and negative charges must be balanced. Okay? An ionic compound must be electrically neutral. Thus, we must have 2 negative charges to balance your 2 plus nga charge sang imo nga calcium. Okay? This requires a ratio of 1 Ca2 plus 2 H2PO4. Okay, ions. We designate by enclosing your formula sa imong nga dihydrogen phosphate in a parenthesis para mabalaan mo nga this is a polyatomic nga ion, your dihydrogen nga phosphate, your H2PO4. Okay? Ang negative din nga sign, that is the sign of your ion. And ang iyang 4, this is oxygen is adral. This is error ang aton nga daan ang aton nga pag-copy or pag-type bala sa aton nga module. Okay, since this is a chemical nga equation. Okay, the formula is now Ca, okay, parenthesis mo ang imong mga dihydrogen phosphate, which is H2PO4. Then sa end sa imong parenthesis, there is a number 2 signifying that your dihydrogen phosphate need adwa ka bilog nga dihydrogen phosphate. Nga man, because your dihydrogen phosphate is a negative or 1 negative. Ay mga calcium is 2 positive. Therefore, you need 2 dihydrogen phosphate. Okay, because an ionic compound is not made up of a single discrete molecule, it may be properly symbolized using your molecular formula. Instead, ionic compound must be symbolized by a formula indicating that the relative number of its constituents ion. Okay, for your compounds containing only monoatomic ions, for example, your sodium chloride, okay, and for many compounds containing your polyatomic ions, such as your calcium sulfate, okay, this formula are just your empirical formulas introduced earlier in this chapter. However, the formulas for some of your ionic compound containing your polyatomic ions are not empirical formulas. You have here an example of your ionic sodium oxalate. Okay, it is comprised of your sodium and your C2O2. Then you have your nagliwat lang siya. Okay, it is a combined in a ratio is that it is a 2:1 nga ratio. You need to have 2 sodium. Okay. This is a C2O. Ang iya din nga ion charge is 2 negative glass. Okay? 2 negative. Ano ba? Negative, yeah, sakto. 2 negative, then you have a 4 nga ga-attach sa iyang nga oxygen. You need to have 2 sodium because your sodium ion charge is only 1 plus. And ang imong charge for your sodium sa mga oxalate, okay, which is C2O, 2 minus nga ion charge, which is an ion, then 4, C2O4 na siya dapat. So the subscript of this formula are not the smallest possible whole numbers of each and can still be divided into 2. Okay? Ang mga empirical formula for 4, pwede mo pa sa mapanubo ang LCD which is 2. Therefore, ang mga empirical formula it now is NaCO2. Okay, that is not acceptable formula for sodium oxalate. However, as it does not accurately represents your compound, your polyatomic nga ion which is your C2O4 with a charge of 2 minus. Okay, your molecular compounds naman niya are many compounds that does not contain ions but instead consist solely of discrete neutral molecules. Okay, these molecular compounds is what you call your covalent compounds result when atoms share rather than being transferred, which is ang ibig sabihin sa transfer is either gaining or losing of your electrons. Your covalent bonding is an important and extensive concept in your chemistry, and it will be treated in a considerable detail in a later chapter for this text. We can often identify your molecular compounds on the basis of their physical properties under your normal conditions. Your molecular compounds often exist as gases or mga pag-boiling mo sa imong liquid or low melting solids. Although many important exemptions exist. Whereas your ionic compounds are usually formed when metal and non-metal is being combined, ang imo naman nga covalent compound are usually formed by the combination of your non-metals, where we can use our periodic table to help us recognize many of the compounds that are what you call your covalent. While we can use the position of the compounds element in the periodic table to predict whenever it is an ionic or covalent, it is to the point in our study of our chemistry that we should be aware that this is a very simplistic approach that does not account for any number of interesting exceptions. So you have shades of gray exist between your ionic and molecular compound, and you'll learn more about sa aton nga mga bondings later. You have here to predict the type of your bonds in your compounds. To predict whenever the following compounds are either ionic or what you call your molecular. First, you have your letter A, your Ki stands for your potassium and also your iodine. Okay, the compound used as a source for iodine in your table salt, and you have your hydrogen H2O2. Okay, the bleach and then disinfectant hydrogen peroxide, and you have your CH3, Cl3. Okay, this is anesthetic chloroform, and you have your L2CO3. It is a source of lithium in antidepressant. Okay, you have here a solution or paano tayo mabalaan or maging to know if it's either ionic ba or molecular. First, you have your potassium or yung mga Ki. Your potassium is from your group 1. Group 1 is a metal and your iodine is a group 17 which is a non-metal. Therefore, Ki is predicted to be your ionic. Kaya na alin sa babaw. A mixture of a metal and non-metal, which is a ionic. Then you have your letter B. Letter B is a combination of your hydrogen that is a non-metal. Okay. Then your oxygen naman niya class is from group 16 that is also a non-metal. Okay, your hydrogen peroxide is predicted to be a molecular. Then you have a group 14 which is a non-metal combined with a group of our group 1 hydrogen that is also a non-metal. Then a chlorine that is also a non-metal. Okay, they are all non-metal, therefore it is molecular. For letter D naman niya, you have your lithium. Lithium is a metal. Then your carbonate is a polyatomic ion. Therefore, it is predicted to be ionic.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for the summary of our ionic bonding, you have your metals, okay? Particularly those from your group 1 and group 2 tend to lose the number of electrons that will have or that will leave them with the same number of your electrons as the preceding noble gases in the periodic table. By this means, a positive change in your forms or magiging form nga may positively charged. Similarly, your non-metals in the periodic table by the means no, uh, Similarly, your non-metals, especially halin sa group 16 and 17, are much lesser extent those sa aton nga group 15 that can gain the number of your electrons needed to provide atoms and the same number of your electrons as in the sa aton nga mga noble gases sa aton nga periodic table. Thus, your non-metal tend to form negative ions. Okay, your positively charged ions are called your cations and your negatively charged ion is what you call your anions. Ions can be either monoatomic. Okay, monoatomic, ibig sabihin containing only one atom, and then your polyatomic ions containing one or more atoms. Okay, compounds that contains ions is what you call your ionic compounds, and your ionic compounds generally form from metals and non-metals. Okay, mga ion bondings or ionic bonds. Then you have your compounds that do not contain ion but instead consist of atom bonded together or tightly together in a molecule or ang unchanged group of your atoms that behave in a single unit is what you call your covalent compounds. Your covalent compound usually form from two or more non-metals. Covalent or molecular naman sa doon nga terminology. Your chemical nomenclatures na. Okay, sa itong chemical nomenclatures, nomenclatures like the naming, okay, a collection of rules for naming of things. It is important in science in many other situations. This module describes the approach that is used to name your simple ionic and also your molecular mga compounds, such as your NaCl, your CaCO3, and O2, N2O4. Okay, the simplest of these are your binary compounds, those containing only two elements, but we will also consider ang ating mga names sa mga ionic compounds containing your polyatomic ions and has one specific but very important class compounds known as your acid or yung mga subsequent chapter ta sa sunod pa. Okay, we will limit our attention sa atong mga inorganic compounds that are composed principally of elements other than your carbon and will follow the nomenclature guidelines nga ginhatag sa aton sang IUPAC. Okay, the rules for your organic compounds in which carbon is the principal element. We will be treating that later sa atong mga next mga chapter. Here, as on ionic compound, to name one inorganic compound, we need to consider the answer to several questions. First, if it is kung ang compound ba is either ionic ba or molecular. If the compound is ionic, okay, does the metal ion from one type or pagiging fixed na nga charge? Or halin ba siya sa one or more than one type or mga variable charges? And then ions if either ang ions mo is monoatomic or polyatomic. Then if the compound is molecular, okay, does it contain only hydrogen? If so, does it also contain your oxygen? Okay, from others we place the compound into appropriate category and then name it accordingly. We will begin with with your nomenclature rules for your ionic mga compound. You have your compounds containing your monoatomic ions. Okay, the name of the binary, mga simbolo ng anay, containing monoatomic ions that consist the name of your cations. The name of the metal followed with the name of your ion. Okay, for example, the name of your non-metallic element with the ending replaced with the suffix IDE. For example, we have here your sodium chloride. Okay, your sodium, first yung dili nga part, which is your Na, that is being combined with your chlorine. Diba? Cl is chlorine. Can change the name din na chlorine, but sodium chloride. Then you have your potassium bromide, hindi na bromine. Okay? Then you have your calcium kag iodide, hindi na iodine. For your I, diba? You have your F. For your CS stands for cesium fluoride. Then you have your sodium oxide. Okay, hindi na oxygen, your sodium. Okay, sodium oxide. Then you have your CD, stands for cadmium. And for your S, hindi na sulfur but sulfide. Then you have your magnesium nitride and also calcium phosphide. Then you have your lithium chloride and also aluminum carbide. Your C, okay, carbide, hindi na carbon. Okay, compounds containing ng mga polyatomic ions. Okay, compounds containing polyatomic ions are named similarly for those sa aton man nga mga monoatomic nga ions. Except there is no need to change your IED nga ending. Okay, since the suffix is already present in the name of your anion. For example, you have your potassium acetate. Okay, your potassium, okay, then this is your polyatomic, which is your C2H3O2, that is your acetate. Then you have your sodium, Na, and your bicarbonate, which is your H3CO3. Then you have your aluminum carbonate, which is your aluminum. Then your carbonate, which is CO3. Okay, then you have your aluminum chloride. Okay, it's either sa unahan siya or sa ulihi. What happens here is in proper placing sa aton nga mga compounds, okay, the one that has a positive charge will be always in front. Diba? Aton nga chloride or aton nga chlorine is negative charge. Aton nga ammonium has a positive charge of 1. Ang imong chlorine, okay, has a negative charge of 1. Your calcium phosphate, calcium mo is, di ba, 2 plus. Okay, therefore, ang imong sulfate, okay, it is a 2 minus. Your magnesium phosphate, okay, your magnesium is 2 plus and your phosphate is 3 minus. Okay. Ionic compounds in your cabinets. Every day you encounter and use a large number of your ionic compounds. Some of these compounds, where they are found and what they are used for, are listed here sa dalawang sa itong table. Look at the labels of the ingredient listed in the various products that you are using during your few days and see if you run into those any of those in the table, and you will find your ionic compound that you know now and name right their formula. You have your ionic compound, which is your sodium chloride. Your sodium chloride can be found in your table salt. Your potassium iodide, okay, adding your iodized salt for your thyroid nga health. Then you have your sodium fluoride sa aton nga mga toothpaste. You have your sodium bicarbonate, which is main composition sa aton mga baking soda na ginagamit sa pagluto. You have your sodium carbonate, okay, washing soda or sa aton nga mga cleaning reagents. Then you have your sodium hypocarbonate, carboride, sodium hypochlorite, okay, active ingredient in household bleach. You have your calcium carbonate, ingredient in antacid, also ang aton nga magnesium hydroxide, and also aluminum hydroxide is also ingredient for antacid. Then you have your sodium hydroxide, okay, lies are for use as drain cleaner. Then potassium phosphate, food additive, and magnesium sulfate, added for purified water. Then you have your sodium hydrogen phosphate, anti-caking agent used in powder products. And you have your sodium sulfite, which is ginagamit sa aton ng mga preservative. Now you have here compounds containing your metal ions with a variable charge. Most of the transition of metals can be formed two or more cations with the different charges. Your compounds of these metals with nonmetals are named with the name method as compound in the first category, except for the charge of the metal ion in a specific by a Roman numeral and is parentheses after the name of the metal. The charge of the metal ion is determined from the formula of the compound and the charge of your anion. For example, considering the binary ionic compound of your iron and chlorine. Okay, your iron typically exhibits a charge of it's either 2 plus or 3 plus. And the two corresponding compound formula for your ions is your FCl2, which is your chlorine, and for your FeCl3. The simplest name of your iron chloride will in this case be ambiguous and does not distinguish between the two either compounds. In these cases like this, the charge of the metal ion is included as a Roman numeral in or maging sulod siya sa parenthesis, immediately following the metal name. This, for example, of the compound is an ambiguous name as your iron 2 chloride and also iron 3 chloride respectively. Other examples will be provided diri sa atong table. You have here atod nga Fe which is 3. Ibig sabihin ang gingamit nga cation charges is 3 plus. Then you have your mercury nga 1. Okay, and your mercury nga 2 plus. Then you have your copper which is 2 plus. Or ginamit niya ni sa aton nga is ang iyang cation nga ginagamit. Out of date nomenclature, use the suffixes IC or CUS. Okay, designated metals at the higher and lower charges respectively. Your iron chloride or Fe3 was previously called as ferric chloride, and for your sa 2 naman niya, it is known as ferrous. Okay, kung nubo nga value, it is ferrous. The higher the value, it is ferric. Okay, thus this naming convention has been largely abandoned by your scientific community. It remains to be used by some segmentary industry. For example, that will be used in your stannous fluoride on the tube of your toothpaste. This represents that the formula is SNF2. Therefore, ginagamit us the lower the value. Okay, ibig sabihin 2 and properly named as your tin 2 fluoride, and the other fluoride which is NSF F2 which is previously called as your stannic fluoride, but now it is being called your tin 4 chloride. Okay, for example, here you have naming of your ionic compound. You have here example which is your F2S3, then you have your copper and your Se, then Ga and your CrCl3, then you have your tin. Okay, sa itong solution. Okay, an ion in this compound has a fixed negative charge. Okay, yung mga negative charge makita nila sa babaw sa aton nga element or atoms. Okay, and the compound must be neutral. Okay, before the total number of a positive charge in each compound, we must need to know the equal number of negative charges and also positive na charge nga ions. It must be sa aton nga Fe. Okay, kay parang balaan mo kung pila niyang iyang charge na iyang ion, just look at ang iyang sa punta sang yaman nga compound which is your sulfide. Okay, para mabala mo kung hindi pa sila balance. For example, you have your your iron. Okay, since ang imong charge sa imong sulfur is 2 minus. Okay, ang imong chlorine ay imong iron is 3 plus. Then you have your copper which is 2 plus. Okay, combined with your selenide. Then you have your Ga which is gallium. Okay, gallium is 3 plus. Then you have your chromium which is also 3 plus and your titanium which is 3 plus. So sa ilang naming gin parenthesis nila ang ilang different nga mga ion charges. Okay, so dira man lang then combine mo lang ilang last nga chemical or last nga element, which is yung mga sulfide, your selenide, nitride, chloride, and sulfate. Okay, sulfate, tandaan nyo nga because it is a polyatomic nga ion na. Okay, wala siya nag-ide, sulfide. Okay, kaya ang sulfide, it is for sulfur, which is your S. Then this is your polyatomic. Then you have your selenide, your nitride from your N, and chloride. Okay, now for the molecular or covalent nga compounds. Okay, the bonding of the characteristic of your inorganic molecules or mga compounds are different from your ionic compounds. They are named using different systems as well. The charges are of your cations and also anion dictates the ratio of your ionic compounds. So to specify the names of your ionic provide your sufficient nga information to determine your chemical formulas. However, because covalent bonding allows for significant variation in the combination of your ratio of the element or sa ito nga atom in a molecule. And the names of your molecular compounds must be explicitly identified this ratio. Now here, compounds composed of two elements. When two non-metallic elements from a molecular compound with several combination ratio are often possible. For example, your carbon and oxygen can form a compound which is your CO and CO2. Okay? Since these different substances with different properties, they cannot have the both same name. Okay? They cannot have isang ngalan nga carbon oxide. Okay? To deal with this situation, we use the naming method. It is one similar sa aton nga mga ionic compounds but with added nga mga prefixes. Okay? To specify the number of the atoms of each nga element. The name of your metallic elements, you have your farther from your from left or sa aton nga bottom sa aton nga periodic table. It is the first to be followed by the name that is more non-metallic element and it's moving farther sa aton nga from right and or from the top. With this ending is being changed into IDE. Okay, the number of your atoms of each element are designated by a Greek prefixes shown sa aton nga table sa dalong. You have here kung 1 lang siya gani class, you will be calling it with a sub or prefix with a mono. Okay, then you have your di. Ibig sabihin niya na dua, then you have your tri, tatlo, your tetra for 4, and penta for 5. Kung 6 naman yung class, it is with the use of prefix nga hexa. Then you have your hepta for 7, octo for 8, and nona for 9. And lastly, 10 for your deca. Okay, when one of the atom of the first element is present, the prefix mono is usually deleted from the part. Thus, your CO is named as carbon monoxide and your CO2 is called your carbon dioxide. Okay, when these two vowels are adjacent with the A or the Greek prefix is usually dropped. So some of the example is being shown here sa dalom. You have here sulfur dioxide. Di, ibig sabihin dua ka oxygen. Then you have your sodium trioxide, tatlo ka oxygen. Nitrogen dioxide, okay, di, dua. Tetroxide, big tetro or tetra. Okay, di ba tetra sa dapat. Pero kay O man ang yapunta for your oxygen, naging tetroxide na sa. Then you have your di. Okay, di, ibig sabihin dua ka nitrogen. Okay, dinitrogen pentoxide, hindi pentaxide, pentoxide. Then you have your boron, boron trichloride. Okay, change man ang iya nga punta sa iya nga element which is not chlorine but chloride. You have your sulfur hexafluoride, hexa for 6. Then you have your phosphorus pentafluoride. Okay, then you have your tetra for 4. Okay, tetraphosphorus decaoxide. Then you have your iodine hepta for 7. There are a few common names that you will be encounter as you will continue to study at ng chemistry. For example, although NO is often called as your nitric oxide, its proper name is nitrogen monoxide. Similar with your N2O, which is known as your nitrous oxide. even though our rule would specify the name should be dinitrogen monoxide. And H2O, this is usually called your water, not by dihydrogen monoxide. You should commit in the memory of mga common names. Okay, sa aton or mga example diri sa dolom. You have here naming your covalent compounds. You have here SF6, then you have your N2O3, your Cl2O7, then you have your P4O6. So there is atong solution. You have S for sulfur, hexa for 6, then fluoride. You change your ED sa punta. Your di for 2 nga nitrogen and trioxide. Okay? Then you have your dichloride hepto. Okay? Hindi hepta ha. Because O ang iya nga punta sa imong oxygen. Then you have your tetra. Okay? Tetra for 4 and hexoxide. Okay, so sa atong nga binary acids naman yung class, some compounds containing your hydrogens are member of important class of substance known as your acids. The chemical of these compounds is explored in more detail sa next mga chapter which we will be focusing sa atong nga acid. Pero sa atong lang though summary pa lang or introductory sa atong nga mga binary acid. Okay, it will suffice the note so many acids releases your hydrogen ions or what you call your H+ when dissolved in water. To denote this distinct chemical property, a mixture of water with an acid is given with the name of derived of its compound's name. If a compound is a binary acid or atong nga comprised of your hydrogen and one other non-metallic element. Okay, the word hydrogen will be changed into hydro. Okay, with the other non-metallic element name is being modified by adding the suffix IC. Okay, the word acid is being added as a second word. For you have here example, your HCl. Okay, H being in front of your chlorine or ginatawag ta nga hydrogen chloride. Okay, is being dissolved in your water. The solution is being called as your hydraulic acid. Several other example of this nomenclature is shown sa aton nga table. You have here an hydrogen fluoride of or kung sa din gas pa lang siya pero kung i-mix niya siya with your water or may dissolve siya into water, it will be called as your hydrofluoric acid. You have your hydrogen chloride. Magiging name niya ng sangya acid is hydrochloric acid. Your hydrogen bromide will be called hydrobromic acid. Then your hydrogen iodide will be called hydroiodic acid. Then you have your hydrogen sulfide will be called your hydrosulfuric acid in aqueous solution or being dissolved in your water. Or makita nyo ng AQ, okay, it is being sa liquid nga state. Then you have your oxa acids. Okay? Oxy acid. Okay, many compounds containing 3 or more elements such as your organic compounds or coordinated compounds are subject to a specialized nomenclature or naming rule, okay, that will be learned later. However, we will be briefly discussing the important compounds known as your oxyacid. Okay, oxyacids are compounds that contains your hydrogen and also hydrogen and at least one of the element that are bonded in such way as impart acidic properties to the compound. Then you will learn in this detail of the next mga chapter. Your typical oxyacid consists of your hydrogen combined with a polyatomic or your oxygen-containing ions to name oxyacid. Omit your hydrogen. First, you need to omit your hydrogen. Then you need to replace the root name of your ion, replacing with the suffix 8 with your IC or ITE or OUS or ROS and add the term acid. For your example, you have here your H2CO3, okay, which you might be tempted to be called your hydrogen carbonate, okay, to name this correctly, but your hydrogen is being omitted and the ATE of your carbonate will be replaced with your IC. Ibig sabihin ko mo yung mga hydrogen sa imong naming and then acid will be the term or the word acid will be added. So its name will be called your carbonic acid. Well, di na siya hydrogen carbonate but carbonic acid. Other names or other examples are being given dito sa ating table, which will be, makita niyo yung mga exemptions of the general naming method, such as your H2SO4, that will be called your sulfuric acid, not sulfic acid. Okay, for sulfur, okay, sulfur, not sulfic, and your H2SO4 for being sulfurous, not sulfurous acid. Here you have your acetate. Okay, your acetate is HC2H3O2. Then, pagiging acid name niya is acetic acid. Hindi siya magiging hydrogen or hydroacetate. Diba? Then you have your nitrate. Okay, it will be called your nitric. Okay, not nitrogen acid. Okay, it is nitric acid. You have your nitrite, okay, nitrous, okay. You have here, di ba, atong naming, you have 3, 2, okay, so 2 as being low, you have your nitrous, and IC being has the higher value sa imong oxygen present, you have your nitric, your nitrous, HNO2. Then you have your perchlorate. Okay, your perchlorate is being called as your perchloric. Okay, perchloric. Per as having the highest oxygen content sa mga chlorine oxide. Okay, perchlorate. Perchlorate, it's being called your perchloric acid. Your carbonate or H2CO3. Okay, then you have your carbonic acid, your sulfate, H2SO4, being called your sulfuric acid, and your sulfite, H2SO3, which is being called your sulfurous acid. You have here, lastly, is your phosphate, being called as phosphoric acid. Now, for the summary sa aton nga chapter 4, okay, chemists use nomenclature rules to clearly name your compounds. Your ionic and your molecular compounds are named using somewhat different methods. Same sa imong nga binary ionic compound that is typically consists of a metal and a non-ionic non-metal. Then for the name of your metal, that is written first, okay, followed by the name of a non-metal with the ending being changed to IDE. For example, you have your K2O, okay, that is being called your potassium oxide. Then, if the metal can form into ions with the different charges, a Roman numerical number is being parentheses followed by the name of the metal or specified by its charge. Thus, your FeCl2 is being called your, or paging isulat mo, it is iron, parenthesis, Roman numeral number nga 2, then close parenthesis, then chloride. And your FeCl3 is being written as iron, open parenthesis, Roman numerical number nga 3, then you have close parenthesis, then chloride. Some of the compounds contain your polyatomic ions. Okay, the name of your common polyatomic ions should be memorized. Molecular compounds can form your compounds with different ratio of their elements. So prefixes are used to specify the number of your atoms of each element in a molecule of a compound. Example of this is your sulfur or SF6, which is being written as your sulfur hexafluoride, and you have your N2O4, okay, it is written as dinitrogen tetraoxide, okay, an acid of an important class of compound containing hydrogen and having special nomenclature rule. Okay, your binary acids are named using your prefix, your hydro, okay, then changing the IDE suffix to IC and adding the word acid. For your HCl, to be called your hydrochloric acid, and also your oxy acid, named by the changing of the ending of their ion from your ATE to IC and also ITE CAG-OUS. Okay, by adding the word acid itself. Man, you have here example is carbonic acid. Okay, so that would be all sa atong chapter 4, and thank you and stay safe always.